And good evening, I'm Jonathan Higgins, live from our Cincinnati studios, and we've got quite a show tonight. Railfanning with a scanner, understanding radio jargon that you hear over the radio. And a lot of times it sounds like the old Charlie Brown adults, walk, 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 walk. You can't figure out what you're kind of listening to. So I've been putting together this show right down to the wire within the last couple hours. And I've even pulled some scanner audio from my own scanner for us to listen to tonight. So I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of background on scanning and how to use a scanner while railfanning. And then we'll take a listen to a couple of the audio files that I pulled and kind of dissect them a little bit and talk about those as well. So we've got a great show underway. If you're joining us for the very first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Do that right now. We're very excited to cover tonight's show. Topic of discussion, as I just mentioned at the top of the show, railfanning with a scanner, understanding radio jargon, in this case, railroad radio jargon. So we got some upcoming events where I'll be trackside railfanning. As I've been mentioning in the last several shows, the first of our many stops throughout the area, Ohio and Kentucky, maybe Indiana, maybe some stops in Michigan as well. We're calling it the Buckeye Bluegrass Express 2024 Tour. Our first stop will be in Ludlow, Kentucky on April the 6th from 8 a.m. until noon at the Ludlow Railfanning Tower. Really excited about, making our first stop there. Then we're traveling a little further north up to Hamilton, Ohio. And that'll be from 8 a.m. until noon at Butler Street. It's right by the McDonald's, right in the downtown area. There's a couple of parking lots there. We'll set up shop from 8 a.m. until noon. And we'll be making lots of stops along the way. And we just added this one recently, Winton Place. We'll be there on Saturday, June the 1st from 9 a.m. until noon. This is closer to Cincinnati, Ohio. The reason why I picked June, it's a dirt road in there, and hopefully with the weather that we have typically in April and May, things have dried out a bit. We won't be having a muddy mess through there. It's a really cool spot. Any information on any of these stops along the Buckeye Bluegrass Express 2024 tour, you can check it out on our website, trainaficionado.com/events. And I'll be adding more events throughout the weeks coming up. So, new product on our website. If you're a fan of Train Aficionado and the Scanner Guys, we actually have a camping mug that features both logos. The Train Aficionado on one side, the Scanner Guys on the other. Help support the Train Aficionado channel by shopping our store. There is a link to this camping mug right in the description of this video, so definitely click on that link. Take advantage of getting a really cool gift either for yourself or someone else that likes the show. You could shop our store, trainaficionado.com, and then click on the store link. I'm wearing one of the hats that are actually a part of our store, so of course we have other things other than the mug. We actually have t-shirts, a travel mug, hoodies, several different things on the website. Check out our merch on the website as well. So, railfanning with a scanner, understanding railroad radio jargon. That's going to be tonight's discussion. If you're watching this show for the very first time, typically we do the slideshow presentation, and then we roll into your Q&A. So if you've got any questions, post those in the comments. I'll try to read those as I go through the show, and hopefully answer your questions towards the tail end. So why should you consider having a scanner while railfanning? You learn so much. Hearing the communication in between the train crews and the dispatcher, you know if the line is pretty active, you know when the next train's coming. If they're mentioning milepost or locations along the line, that is extremely helpful. Plus, you knowing where you're at on that line is also going to be helpful to understand what you're hearing over the radio. knowledge, learning what's going on along that main line in the yard and everywhere between. You're going to get used to hearing similar radio communication if you rail fan in the same spot. You're going to be recognizing some of the local trains that are communicating, going into yards or sidings or things like that. Also, it's fun to be able to monitor the communication over the radio. It can be quite entertaining at times. I was at the Cincinnati Union Terminal a little bit ago, I think about a week or so ago. I heard some funny radio communication over the scanner. It kind of made me chuckle. But yeah, there's all types of things that you can hear on the scanner. Some areas going to be more busier than others, especially where there's a major yard or junction point where multiple lines intersect. You're going to be hearing a lot more activity over the scanner. So what can you hear on the scanner? You can hear those defect detectors, the FRED, which is the end of train communication. You can also hear the work crews communicating to the train crews, the dispatcher communicating to the train crew. You can also hear yard and switching operations over the scanner. Some of the cool pictures that you can see here up in the top there, that is a FRED that's on the back of a Norfolk Southern train. I actually took that in North Carolina on a siding there that's right by a parking lot in Kannapolis, North Carolina. The two scanners that are shown in the image are the latest and greatest from Uniden, the BCD 160DN and BCD 260DN. These radios are able to support analog conventional communication, and they're also able to support digital NXDN and DMR conventional communications. And that other photo, give you a little bit of background on that, that's when 611 was down at the North Carolina Transportation Museum, leaving to make its way up to Pennsylvania several years ago. I was able to get it before it latched on to a Norfolk Southern locomotive to make the ferry move up to Pennsylvania. So many times I get asked, how does it all work? Why do I only hear the dispatcher most of the time and I don't hear the train crew? So the communication is what we call line of sight. So many of you have used those talkabouts, those little inexpensive two-way radios. They'll work about a mile or less. That is line of sight. So what that basically means is it's, using the radio power going the distance that it's able to go with its low wattage. Typically it's about a half a watt. So sometimes it's either a mile to a half a mile. All depends on terrain and what's going on in between you and the other person. So let's take a look at it from a railroad standpoint. So if I'm rail fan number 2, I'm pretty far down the tracks. I'm not too far away from a tower where the dispatcher is transmitting off of. So I'm going to more likely hear on my scanner, I'm going to be able to hear the dispatcher because I'm further away from the train crew, which is way over to the right side of your screen. So if I'm rail fan 1, I'm a little bit closer to the train crew. And I'm also next to the tower. So I'm going to be able to hear the train crew and the dispatcher's communication. So that's how it all works. So if you're able to hear the dispatcher, you're probably near one of the towers. If you're hearing the train crew, typically that train crew is relatively close. Typically their cab radio was about 50 watts or so. Their portable's about 5 watts. So that basically will mean that that'll go typically X amount of miles. Typically the cab radio will go anywhere from 5 to 10 miles, depending on the terrain. If you're up on a hill, you're probably going to be able to pick up a little bit more. If the train's in a valley, that signal may have a hard time getting out of there. You may not be able to hear it. So all those things affect, terrain, weather, play a huge role in reception. So rail fan number 1, because he's close to the tower and close to the train crew, he's going to be able to hear both ends of the conversation. Rail fan number 2 is further down the line, is not going to be able to hear the train crew as well as railfan number 1. May not be able to hear it at all. So it sounds like a one-sided conversation. Dispatcher is calling out to the train. You hear nothing on your scanner, probably replies back, and then you hear the dispatcher go over the radio and then communicate to the train, and then maybe nothing on the train. So because of the distance, remember, those radios anywhere from 5 to 10 miles, all dependent on the train, could be better or worse. But that's how it works. It's line of sight communication. For public safety, such as police and fire, they have what they call a repeaterized system. So what will happen is there's an input and an output frequency. Typically the input goes into the repeater, and the repeater does exactly what its name does, repeats it out on another channel so everyone in the area can hear the radio communication. With the railroads, typically they don't use a repeater, they're using line of sight communication. So as I mentioned earlier, what can hinder your reception? Typically, elevation, obstructions, weather, and atmospheric conditions can all play a role. You can see here that, this is a mountainous terrain with a photograph that you see over on the far left here. So there's going to be a hard time getting good reception if you're on the other side of this hill. You're probably not going to hear the train crew. If you're within this area, this side of the hill, you're probably going to hear the train crew. Dispatcher probably has multiple transmit sites along the way, so you're probably going to hear them. But keep in mind, all that will affect a reception. Of course, you're going to improve on the scanner's reception by getting a better antenna, such as the one that I mentioned on many of my shows, the Smiley antenna that's tuned for the railroads. That'll work really well. Of course, there's only so much you can do with reception, with line of sight, because it's all about location, location, location. So if you're not in a good location, let's say we're on the other side of this hill, train's communicating dispatcher, probably going to hear the dispatcher, we're probably not going to hear the train, just because of the hill is blocking you and the train. It's an obstacle in between the two of you. So reception can be a huge issue. So as I mentioned, these are things that you can hear on the scanner, the defect detector, the FRED, engineer callouts, work crews, the train dispatcher, and the yard and switching. So these are all things that you can hear on your scanner. Let's take a look at a defect detector. Let's take a listen to one of those. So a lot of times they'll report when they do have a defect, hot wheel, dragging equipment, car height, if a load is shifted, wide load, so many different things that it can report. So let's take a listen to a defect detector. Just going to cue it up right now.
Milepost 27.7. Track 1. No defects. No defects. Total axle 544. End of transmission. No defects. CSX defect detector. Milepost 27.7. Track 1. No defects. No defects. Total axle 544. End of transmission.
All right, so we gathered a lot of information from that. I played it for you twice. I wanted you to be able to hear it. So we learned what the milepost was and how many axles, so we get a general idea how long the train is. We also heard at the tail end of the radio transmission the crew communicate back saying they acknowledged that there was no defects. So, of course, I recorded this off the scanner. Maybe the audio is not going to be so great going out over the broadcast, but I wanted to kind of share that with you. So we got a couple of more audio clips to kind of share, so I'll do that as well. So this is an engineer call out. So I actually got this on the scanner, the engineer calling out 2 different locations. So I'll play that right now so you're able to hear it and go from there. So hold on one second. I'm going to play this audio right now.
Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Wayne Yard, E547 out. Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Stockton, E547 out.
So Stockton and Wayne Yard was the 2 call-outs that this crew said over the radio, and he actually identified CSX E547. So we know what the train symbol is when they do that call-out, and then we're able to use various websites that are out there, being able to find out what this this train is. In this case, it runs from Middletown, Ohio to Russell, Kentucky, and they run back some empty coal hoppers back down. So we'll take a listen to it one more time so you can kind of hear the information. So it's 2 call-outs. I've taken out the break in between the 2 locations he's traveling through. So you will hear it back to back, the audio. So let's take a listen to it one more time.
Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Wayne Yard, E547 out. Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Stockton, E547 out. Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Wayne Yard, E547 out. Tex 3432 southbound 2, clear Stockton, E547 out.
So there was the audio that you could hear there. I mean, they rattle it off so quickly, so it's kind of hard to follow it relatively quick. But yeah, I mean, that's the basics of kind of learning, where the train is at a given time and being able to figure out everything that's going on. So I was able to actually capture on the scanner an emergency, and I believe I got the radio identification number, or symbol, I should say, of this train, which is M352. It's running from Louisville up to Indiana. And this was an emergency that was on the railroad line. I'm going to play the audio. We can kind of listen in and find out what happened. So hold on as I play that right now for you.
Emergency, M352 is an emergency, northbound track 2. Outpost 24.7, 6,800 feet. Jax, M55819, over. Do your best to get stopped before Stockton, over. When you're stopped, I'll take it back and run you up number 1. It's 352 struck a pedestrian above you there between Hamilton and Stockton. Just buzz me up when you get stopped. LC. LC Jax, M352 18, over. 352. Did your air come back up, or have you tried to recover it, over? I'm not going to release it until everybody's clear. When everybody gets clear, then I'll release it. I understand, so it's still an emergency. All right, well, I got a 558 behind you. I've got to run by you. I told them I'd check you before, but there'll be restricted speed by you. They'll be talking to you on channel. Right, everybody looks to be on the east side of me, so everybody should be in clear. I think you'll be able to get her on the side on one thing. Like I said, they're going to be crawling. There'll be restricted speed. I told them extra horn and bell going by the head end and whatnot, and a few cars back, so. I'll brief with them again once your signal's time out behind you and get around you. Well, I guess I'm talking to the conductor, my conductor. I guess there's people on both sides, so be aware of that. Okay, well, I'll just hold him for now. I'll get back to you here in a minute once his signal's time out, and I'll stop him short of you. Over. Alright, you got some stuff, Luke? Butler Street, southbound 1. C4 is up 19.
So there was probably about a good 30 minutes worth of scanner audio, which I was able to eliminate all the breaks in between and kind of play it back to back. So what we heard there is the engineer go on the radio, emergency, emergency, emergency. He basically stated where he was stopped along the line, also the length of train. Not too sure where the dispatcher acknowledged it. Unfortunately, my scanner didn't grab that particular piece of audio. But later in the recording, you actually hear him communicating to another train on the line, letting them know that this particular train struck someone and he's going to have to hold them at a particular spot. So you can learn a lot over the scanner, especially when there's an event such as this as an emergency. Later, you heard the dispatcher communicating with the train crew, getting an update on what's going on the scene. You know, there's apparently people on both sides of the track, you know, probably emergency crews. So, of course, you know, they're trying to figure out, are they able to pass another train? Because this section of railroad has 2 tracks. So they want to be able to keep the traffic flowing through if possible. It seemed like it was a very active scene, so basically the dispatcher said they were going to hold that train at a particular location until it was safe to do so. So a lot of information within that 30 minutes period condensed down to probably about 2 minutes of audio there. So very interesting stuff that you can hear over the scanner. But those are some of the pieces of audio that I was able to pull from the last couple of days, just being able to share that with you. So we kind of heard several different things. You know, an engineer call out, which is definitely key, which I'll play that again so we can kind of hear that one more time. So the call out basically is the crew just identifying where they're at on the line, identifying what train it is, also their location. So what I'll do is I'll play that audio for you just so you can be able to hear what that all sounds like. So hold on one second.
Tex 3432, southbound 2, clear Wayne Yard, E547 out. Tex 3432, southbound 2, clear Stockton, E547 out.
And that's certainly handy when you're trackside rail fanning, being able to hear, you know, the location of the train. Many railroads will do call-outs where they'll say northbound track 1, X123, and then just say it over the radio. Then if you know where you're at along the line, so if you're at milepost, you know, such and such, you know exactly where you are. And then if you hear the train identifying at a milepost that's either east or west of you or north or south of you, then you know that there's a train coming and what direction it's coming from. Defect detectors, you know, definitely, you know, as I played earlier, are very handy, being able to hear, you know, of course, the train passing the defect detector. Keep in mind that the defect detector will not communicate until once the train has fully passed that particular location. You're not going to be hearing communication until that train has passed that defect detector. So basically, when the train's going by, it's checking for the various things, and then once the train passes, it'll kick on with that radio transmission, letting them know that there's no defects. If there is defects, the automated voice will relay that. The train will basically stop where it's safe to do so. They'll communicate to the dispatcher. The train crew will probably send the conductor out to check on whatever particular item that's causing an issue and seeing if it's safe to continue heading on its route. If it's not, then what they'll do is they'll end up talking to somebody, you know, at the dispatch. to get somebody out there to be able to assist with whatever the situation may be. So there's a lot of great audio there that we kind of try to pull real quick. But yeah, I mean, having the scanner trackside is certainly a huge help. Being able to hear what's going on when you're trackside or even at home. I do have some scanners here that I do listen to the railroads here. Me being able to listen at home, I'm able to get a good indication whether or not it's busy at a particular time of day or slow. There is a lot of, in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, there's a lot of communication over the radio. So you're able to hear a lot of communication because Norfolk Southern and CSX have a major yard right in Cincinnati. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of traffic. If you're in the middle of, northern Ohio, or not even northern Ohio, but in the middle of Ohio where it's a lot of farmlands, there's not a lot of yards and such. Typically, there's not a lot of communication over the scanner. You may hear a defect detector. You may hear the engineer doing call-outs. And if you program in the FRED frequencies, which is the UHF frequencies, you would be able to hear that chirping as the train gets closer to you. And that's a low-powered transmitter. So it sounds like a series of beeps you would hear over the radio. At some point, I should pull what that audio sounds like so you can get familiar with what that sounds like when the FRED is basically it's communicating to the locomotive. So the head end and the rear end are communicating. It's through a radio transmission, and the equipment is on the rear end of the train, communicates to the equipment on the front end, and it can indicate if there's something going on with the train. Let's say if an air hose becomes loose, or something else happens, it'll communicate to the front end of the train. The crew will be able to establish that there's something going on. They'll be able to stop the train safely and be able to inspect, if there's an issue with the train, such as one of the brake line hoses is disconnected or something of that nature. So a lot of great audio there. I just wanted to share some of that. So a lot of things that you can hear over the scanner. The scanner is very handy when you're out trackside. The biggest takeaways, knowing where you're at on the line. Typically you can download many of these old railroad timetables for the various railroad lines. If you search railroad timetables for CSX, Norfolk Southern, UP, or any of the other railroad lines, you can pull up, these look like track charts, say mileposts, and it'll show you where the defect detectors are. It'll show you whether it's one track or two track. Not a lot has changed with the railroads for the most part. So you probably can use an older timetable. Try to find the newest timetable for your region as possible. So, being able to use that is definitely handy. We've talked about timetables in shows before and how to read those timetables. But yeah, just knowing where you're at along the line, the mileposts, where the defect detectors are, is going to be helpful when you're listening on the scanner, because you'll hear those call-outs, or you'll hear the defect detectors, or you'll hear the dispatcher communicating to the train, hey, you've got a speed restriction in between mileposts here and milepost such and such. So now okay, so I have a train that's coming in my direction because I'm just north of that milepost, or I'm just south of it, or east or west, depending on the direction. So knowing where you're at on the railroad is definitely key when using the scanner. The other thing too, it is sometimes hard to be able to hear what they're saying, because a lot of times they'll say it really fast. So you need to be paying attention to the scanner. Probably have the scanner up close so you're able to hear the audio, or use an amplified lapel speaker if you're using a portable radio, which is going to be super helpful. I do have a scanner in my truck which has an amplified speaker, so I'm able to listen to railroad communication in there. And then when I'm outside, I use my portable and being able to listen to the communication there. But it's definitely a valuable tool when you're out rail fanning. Let's take a look at some of the check-ins and comments that have came in tonight. A lot of our regulars are here tonight. Chris, Let's Go Rail Fanning. Adam, thank you so much for joining tonight. Robert, watching. Todd, Dale, Just to name a few, I see a little bit of back and forth in between many of you. Jim, I did receive your email. I need to reply back to you. I saw what you wrote there. Chris is talking about, some of the rail fanning that he has up in Michigan. Actually talking to Adam back and forth. I have SGV Scanner watching this evening. Welcome. And several other people watching tonight. Thank you so much. Just wanted to give you a couple of shout outs there. So the 125 AT is probably one of the best scanners for rail fanning. I would definitely hold on to the 125 AT. The 160 DN, the only advantage to that, it has more channels and it supports NXDN. So eventually the railroads will go to NXDN. I don't know when or what it's going to sound like. It's going to be a collective effort, which we've talked about on many of our shows. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Let's take a look at a couple of slides. I'll return back to some of your comments and questions. Feel free to post those in the chat, and we'll go from there. So just want to remind you that we're going to be at a couple of different locations in the next couple of months. At Ludlow, Kentucky on April the 6th for our tour, our Buckeye Bluegrass Express 2024 tour at Ludlow at the Railfanning Pavilion. It's a beautiful tower that's right by the what they call the Rat Hole, which runs from Tennessee up to Cincinnati, Ohio. And then we go a little further north. We go up to Hamilton, Ohio for May the 4th at Butler Street. And then we actually make a trip back into Cincinnati at Whitten Place on Saturday, June the 1st from 9 a.m. to noon. We'll be at this location that's just north of the Norfolk Southern and CSX rail yard in Cincinnati, Ohio. So yeah, right outside of Queens Gate. And it's right by that cool signal that you can see on the Norfolk Southern photograph there. You could catch some local action, short line. You can also catch there Norfolk Southern and CSX as well. Make sure you shop our store. We've got all types of cool stuff right now. We have our new product, which is the Train Aficionado Scanner Guys Camping Mug, which is now available on our store. So definitely check it out. Support the channel as well. We've got hats, t-shirts, hoodies, all types of cool stuff on the store, which basically helps us to improve on equipment and what such for the shows. But that is tonight's discussion right there. We're talking about, rail fanning with a scanner, understanding railroad radio jargon. So hopefully kind of helped you there. So a lot of things that you can gather from the radio is you'll hear typically the train identify themselves by a symbol. If you have the Heritage Unit app, you're able to look up trains by symbol on there. So if you're able to catch the train symbol, you're able to type it in there. It will search it out, and it'll tell you the starting point and the destination of that train. And a lot of times it will tell you what type of materials it's carrying, whether it's a coal train, like a intermodal or a auto racks. It'll identify that, or mixed goods. So that's a really cool thing. If you get the Heritage Unit app, you can actually search under symbols. You'll be able to search those symbols that you're hearing over the radio, which is really nice. The other things that you hear, with the defect detectors, you hear that going off, you know that there's a train coming, hopefully towards you. Just because the defect detector will say the milepost of the radio, knowing where that's at and where you're situated. If you hear that go off, train's coming in my direction. So it's definitely handy to be able to hear a lot of things over the radios. So it's very handy to have that scanner. Typically, you're going to hear the same communication, typically over the radio. You may actually hear, there's actually one piece of audio I forgot to play. And a lot of times when the dispatcher is giving the train instructions. So let's take a listen to that audio right now. I forgot about this audio clip, and I actually am looking at it right now. So let's take a listen to it right now.
Dispatch St. Albans over. U221 at CPO clear after stopping authority to pass signals flank stop indication main track, eastbound direction. Also have permission to make a reverse move within interlocking main track to the east leg of the Y, westbound direction. And you are instructed to remove power from dual control switch on by hand for your route over. Correct at 1711, 1711, dispatcher PAM over.
So right there, you're able to hear, the dispatcher giving them the crew instructions, to be able to make a particular move, be able to manually throw a switch. A lot of times on these short lines, you're going to hear the dispatcher giving instruction, especially if it's not a remote control switch that a dispatcher is able to throw. The dispatcher is going to give them instructions. You have permission to do this. Once they're cleared of this particular siding or spur line off the main line. And once they're done with their work there, they'll then go over the radio and basically tell the dispatcher the line is aligned properly and is working, is in proper position, I should say. Yeah, I mean, the great thing about, some lines, as Adam is stating, CSX, Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, a lot of the big railroads can basically throw the switches from their computer. Line a route, be able to throw it just by using the computer. And it can be thousands of miles away throwing a switch, which is really cool. But for a lot of other railroad lines, if it's a secondary line or maybe a short line railroad, a lot of stuff is done manually. So there's going to be a lot more communication, making sure everything is done properly by the train crew. So, the dispatcher knows that switch has been realigned properly for the main line so that when the next train goes through, it's not going to have any issues. It's aligned for the main route. So Robert's asking about discussing our favorite railfanning spots. You're more than welcome to if you've got some railfanning spots that you want to tell us about on the show. You can email trainaficionado@gmail.com. Send us a short description of the location that you go railfanning, how many trains you see there, what's unique about this spot, and send us a couple photographs of what this spot looks like, for railfanning. Would love to be able to see that. You can email trainaficionado@gmail.com. Short description, include a couple of photos. I'll be more than happy to share that with our audience, being able to see, where you guys are railfanning and what that all looks like for you. Let's see what else there's here. Moon is asking, when you set a location limit on the number of frequencies you're monitoring. Okay, so Moon, I'm guessing that you're using something like a database-driven scanner. Maybe like a Home Patrol or a 436, 536, SDS 100 or 200. So typically, if you're using the Railroad Nationwide channels as a service search, there's not going to be a lat and long on there. It's going to run wide open. So if you're connected up to a GPS antenna or using a range, it's not going to be able to have a lat and long to be able to determine that. I know I'm getting into the weeds with that, but basically when you run in a service search, it should be able to scan that no matter where you're at in the country, no matter what zip code you have in the radio. With the 125 AT, the scanner is simple enough. You basically run the service search, and it doesn't look at any of that information. It doesn't have a nationwide database in it. So you need to, in order to use that scanner, you need to program the known frequencies in there. You don't program it with a zip code. So it's a pretty straightforward, old school scanner. Chris is mentioning he likes Railfanning, from his hometown all the way out to Chicago, which is really neat. Let's see what other questions there are. Making your homemade antennas. Yeah, that's certainly a great thing. Paul's mentioning that. Doesn't cost a whole lot. You're able to do that. Chris, I believe I've looked at some of your videos that you sent me over. The Home Patrol 3. No word as of whether or not there will be a Home Patrol 3. But if it ever comes out, I would hope that it would support NXDN. The thing is, with NXDN and DMR, other than the two new radios, because it's NXDN conventional and DMR conventional, it's on a paid upgrade. So if Home Patrol 3 comes out, more than likely NXDN will be a paid upgrade that you'll have to pay for on top of the price tag of the Home Patrol 3. That's just a hunch, because that's the same way it is for all of the other radios of its class. You know, the SDSs, the 436, 536, and then, of course, the 996 and the 325P2. All those digital radios that are at the top of the price-wise of Uniden. How far does the signal go from Queensgate? It all depends on terrain and where you're at. So, for instance, that defect detector that I was able to hear on the scanner that I played tonight, because of my location and where it's located, I'm able to get it fairly clear. That's about 10 air miles. That's not the norm. Typically, those defect detectors only go for a few miles. So, for whatever reason, I'm in line of sight with a defect detector. It's in Hamilton, Ohio, and I'm basically just south of there, just outside of Cincinnati. So, it's 10 air miles from me and from where that defect detector is. So, it all depends. It's all location, location, location. For instance, if there's a whole bunch of farmlands, it's all flat, there's nothing in the way, buildings or trees, signal will travel a little bit further. Same thing if there's a body of water in between where that's being transmitted and you're on the other side of the water, signal goes across the water a lot better because there's nothing in the way. So it's all dependent upon location and, what's in between you and the object you're trying to monitor, or the radio you're trying to monitor, I should say. Let's go Railfanning asking what will be the show topic for the scanner guys. I'm not really sure. I haven't thought that far in ahead. Since this is a one-man show, it's pretty much, I come up with it over the, typically after I do this show, I'll come up with the show topic, start putting it together, and then rolling it out. Hopefully, my goal is to eventually get ahead of the curve, where I have a month's worth of shows planned, and if I could get them all put together, then I wouldn't be rolling from one show to another. But yeah, I'm the only one that's kind of puts together these shows each and every week. There's no staff or crew at this point. Lincoln, thank you so much. Great show. I'm happy that you enjoyed it. I kind of was probably about 20 minutes before the show, trying to get all the audio clips pulled, for this show. Bluetooth and scanners. As of right now, there's no scanners that have Bluetooth built into it. You can get, believe it or not, you can get one of these things from Amazon, which is a Bluetooth transmitter receiver. I have this on Transmit, which you can see here, and this will transmit to a Bluetooth speaker. So, of course, you could power it through a USB dongle. And then, of course, you would plug this into your scanner. If you're plugging it into a scanner that has a record jack, I strongly recommend doing that, because the great thing about it is the line audio is adjusted. And when you do that, you need to turn each channel on to record line out, or it won't pick up anything through that particular channel, or jack, I should say. If you're using the headphone speaker or the external speaker, you're going to need to do some adjustments with your audio because you don't want to have it cranked all the way because when you get it on the Bluetooth speaker, it'll be overmodulated. So there's some adjustment with that. If you've got an old BCT 15X or a 15 or a 996, typically those radios have a record jack out. Moon, I'm guessing you're new to the channel. Just so you know, I'm a beta tester for Uniden, so I actually have the 160 and 260 DN. Overall, my review of the radio is it's very much like the 125 AT, where this radio has 1,000 channels versus 500. And also it brings the NXDN and DMR to a 125 type of style radio. So it's got a bigger price tag. For the most part, if you're on a budget and you can't shell out $250 for the portable, go with the 125 AT. As of right now, the railroads have it said if it would, they will all go together to NXDN. It's going to have to be a collective effort because a lot of railroads are sharing each other's roads. So you can't have half of them on NXDN and then the other half on analog. They have to do it collectively together. That's one of the major differences. A larger price tag with the 160 DN. It does have 1,000 channels versus 500, so that basically means 100 channels per bank versus 50 channels. So a little bit larger memory. It's got the DMR, the NXDN included, but pretty much it's a 125 AT with digital capability, conventional-wise for DMR and NXDN. My fan favorite out of the two radios is the 260 DN because it's the 125 AT as a base mobile. So if I had the 125, which I do have the 125 AT, and I was looking to purchase a base mobile, then I would definitely look at the 260 DN. So if you already own the 125 AT and you can basically get the 260 DN as the counterpart. Paul, that's something else that's new on the 160 and the 260 is you can actually name the banks. With the 125 AT, you can only name it in the software. You can't send that information to the radio. It will not go on the radio itself. With the Butel software, you'll see in there for ARC 125, you can actually name the banks on the 125, but that information won't go to the radio, won't name the actual banks. As for the 160 and the 260 DN, you can actually name the banks. So that's something that you can actually do on that particular radio. Great question. That's another difference in between the 160 and the 260, is you can actually name the banks. GT Railroad, Chris, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm not sure what the GT Railroad is. I'm not as familiar with your neck of the woods with the various railroads that are up there. It looks like Adam answered that question. Yeah, unfortunately, Chris, I know a lot of stuff, but unfortunately, as for the local things that may be in your neck of the woods, unfortunately, I don't have all that information in my head. I've never even railfanned up in Michigan, so I'm not as familiar with the railroads up there. But yeah, I did a whole video, Moon, on the 160 and 260, which is on the YouTube channel. So certainly watch that. I've also done it on the Scanner Guys show as well. I haven't done any more videos on the two radios as of lately. I've had the radios through COVID, and then after they finally got manufactured and being produced. So I've been sitting on these beta radios for a long time. So hopefully People will start getting those in their hands. But yeah, for the most part, the 160, the 260 are very much like the 125 AT Grand Trunk. Okay, so I thank you so much for that. I didn't realize the abbreviation. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, that's the thing with these radios. They're a little bit more beefed up, bigger memory. They're able to do DMR and NXDN, conventional. So, and they also have a larger price tag. So if you're looking for an entry-level model scanner for rail fanning, the 125 AT is still a valid radio. Eventually, they'll go to digital. I don't know when. There's a few short lines that are using digital, like the Mystic, Connecticut Scenic Railway over there, and Mystic. Was it is it Mystic? No, Essex Steam Trade in Connecticut. Essex Steam Trade. I'm not too sure why I said Mystic, Connecticut. That's where I used to go camping. The Essex Steam Trade, they're running NXDN on that main line. I didn't have a scanner that had NXDN back in the day when I rode that line, so that would have been handy being able to hear the radio communication. How I knew it was, it said right on the conductor's two-way radio, it said NXDN. And then when I was trying to listen on my scanner, I heard every time they transmitted a static, and it was nice clear static, if that makes sense. So I knew that it was able to do that. Do you know what the firmware update did on the 160 and 260? Not aware of the new firmware update. I haven't done one in a while. If it's a recent update, I would have to do some research and find out what was the big benefit of the update. So, Uniden, when Paul Obitz was the product manager, he was really good about, posting, what the firmware updates were and what they improved upon. As of right now, I'm not sure. And I think he had a wiki page on Uniden's website as well that would show each firmware update and what the firmware update did. So on the 160-260D, and I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure what that was. It could have been just something minor with little things or something a little bit more. Any other questions? We're approaching the top of the hour. Typically the show doesn't go any longer than an hour unless we have a guest, and that can sometimes go a little bit longer if the conversation is interesting. But yeah, definitely come out to one of the Railfanning events. If you want to learn more about all the Railfanning events we have going on, basically go to trainaficionado.com/events, and you'll be able to see all that stuff going on there. Most are all analog. Yes, most of them are all analog. Not aware of any NXDN in Michigan. Yeah, for the most part, I'm not aware of any in Ohio as of right now. I know Florida, down by not too far from show friend Danny Harmon, there was a main line that's basically used by a couple of railroads, was trying to use NXDN, and they had a couple of issues with it, so they keep switching back to analog. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all works if and when they do go NXDN. And of course, with digital communications, it's either crystal clear, it hiccups, or nothing at all, because basically what's transmitted in the air is what we call binary code, zeros and ones. So basically the two-way radio, and I mean, I'm sorry, Moon, I'm in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, but we do have people, a lot of audience members are from this area. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do some stuff in your neck of the woods in Connecticut. If this does work out well and I do get people to come out to these times that I go rail fanning, if I travel anywhere outside of this area, I'll definitely post it in the event page if I'm making any appearances locally, in your neck of the woods. So definitely bookmark the event page on Train Aficionado, which is trainaficionado.com/events. Check it often. I'll keep adding events as I plot dates and so forth. All right. Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for everyone that's joined us this evening. If I did miss you checking in, I appreciate you watching the show tonight. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Train Aficionado. One last question from Adam. He's asking, whatever happened to Whistler? They've been quite quiet. I'm a Uniden guy, just curious. As of right now, there hasn't been anything going on with Whistler. They pretty much inherited that scanner line from GRE. I'll be brutally honest. What they basically did was they inherited that product line from GRE. They manufactured the radios as Whistler radios and slapped their name on it. Other than that, there hasn't been any new scanner product development out of Whistler whatsoever. Other than them just producing the GRE radios. They did talk about a replacement to their high-end Cadillac models, which is the TX1 and the TX2, which was going to be the TX 100 and 200. They announced that, and then they pulled back on that announcement, and I haven't heard anything ever since. There was a woman that was doing their product management and being kind of their front person called Whistler Windy, which she kind of went away. She had a presence on Radio Reference, and then that went away completely. So, unfortunately, I don't know what's going on with Whistler. It's been quiet. Nothing that I've heard, any rumblings on the horizon, anything coming out of them. Thank you so much, Paul, for your comment. You've been railfanning for many years, but always seem to learn something new here every week. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Paul. Greatly appreciate your comments there. That's what I'm trying to do, just trying to educate you guys and help you, with this hobby that's quite a niche hobby, and it's a great great way for a lot of you rail fans to connect through the live chat here. And of course, if you're watching this after the broadcast, you can basically, comment in the comment section, so we greatly appreciate that as well. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Have a great night. Be safe out there. Hopefully you'll be able to catch some trains trackside. Hope to catch you at one of my railfanning events in this upcoming spring, summer, and fall. Thanks to everyone that participated in the live chat. If you've got any questions or comments, certainly post them in the comment section below. Make sure you give our video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Once again, I'm Jonathan Higgins. For our Cincinnati studios, have a great night. We'll catch you again next time on Train Aficionado. Next week, we'll be on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel. We'll cover some sort of interesting topic regarding scanning.